Hello and welcome to Microsoft 365 User Group Train the Trainer Part 9. Wow, I didn't realize that we had broken it down into 9 segments. One of the things I like to share is this is what we do. This is the same content that we go through when we train an organization. And we typically break it down into 4 2-hour chunks over time to make it digestible, but that would be a little difficult to do virtually. So this is the 9th session, culminating 8 hours, roughly speaking, of training. We did boil it down a little bit with some less Q&A than the in-person events do. But this is the culmination, and part of me likes to think that this is the Stephen Covey of it, which is a start with the end in mind. We're finishing, but this is kind of the end, right? This is where we want to end, and this is what we want it to look like. So I'm excited for Nina to kind of take all the content, all the stuff that we talked about, and this part is just kind of the icing on the top. But all the hard work you've done getting to this point is what enables you to make this a great experience for the rest of your team. So Nina, take it away for part 9. Where we're going to talk about bringing your SharePoint sites together, making it easy for your team to navigate, and really plugging in all the structure and all the stuff that we've been working on through this series to a great experience for their team.
Thank you, Nate. All right, so I'm just going to head over to the agenda for today. I do want to start with just a really quick recap of the last 2 sessions because I think it will just tie everything up really nicely today. The main focus of today is like, how do we bring everything together? So we're going to be looking at hub sites, how to set up a hub site, how to associate those with your hub site, looking at some of that navigation, so global navigation. If you think about that very top level navigation that stays consistent no matter where you go in your SharePoint site, I would say that that's one of the biggest roadblocks I've seen with SharePoint is that the default navigation isn't so great, and I'll show you in just a minute what that looks like. So really thinking through, yeah.
Hey Nina, forgive me for interrupting, but this is live stuff, everybody. So we're not seeing your agenda. And I don't know why. So Stephanie, I don't know, she's producing behind the scenes. Now I see at least our video, so that's good. But I don't know, Stephanie, if you can work on that because we're not seeing.
I'm trying to work on it. It's not showing the video right now.
We were literally just testing it all before this. So everybody watching right now, forgive us as we literally had this just tested. So Nina, keep talking about it if you could. But just know that we're working on the presentation, the video side of it, or the sharing side of it. So go ahead.
That's interesting. I could see it on my side. So
I know.
Fun with technology.
Yeah.
Usually while you're doing a demo, it's just a given.
Always. Exactly.
All right, looks like it's up now on my side. Is it, Stephanie?
No, not yet. Okay, just keep talking through the agenda and a high level, and then we'll share as we go along. Hopefully.
All right, so yeah, it's just setting up that consistent navigation. It's one of the the easiest ways to really promote some of that adoption. If people can find what they're looking for really easily, they are going to tend to use it more frequently. Together with that, looking at audience targeting. So you'll probably in your own SharePoint intranet have areas or pages or sections that you don't really want to be visible to everybody. Maybe it's a SharePoint communication site that's restricted to, for example, leadership or a subset of your organization. What you don't want is people clicking on that link and then having an access denied message. So just trying to avoid some of that. So thinking about how do we curate some of that for our audiences. And then the last but a pretty crucial part of this is how do I incorporate my SharePoint intranet inside of Teams? We have spoken quite frequently in the past about trying to create an almost one-stop shop area inside of Microsoft Teams. So being able to access OneDrive in there, collaborate with your team in there, but then also thirdly, to be able to easily access your intranet from there as well. So creating that little shortcut. And if we can get all of the sharing figured out, I'll show you, as you mentioned earlier, Nate, starting with the end in mind. I'll show you how we typically set this up and then how you can do that for yourself as well. So yeah, I'm kind of done with the agenda. So let's see if we can see the.
All right, so Nina, here maybe stop the share on your side and reshare and see if that can work. It was working right before we started. Of course, that's something technology does. But a couple things that as you're doing that I like relative to the audience targeting is that one of the little things that we've found that some organizations like to do is they'll put a list of, like, I'll call it a My Teams menu, so you can actually end up building a navigation in your hub site that way if I'm going to the My Teams section, I only see my teams, and you can target it by groups in your 365 environment, and that's one of the simple ways. Hey, it's showing. All right, that's one of the simple ways that's an example of where we see audience targeting, even if you don't have some other complexities built in. But as people are navigating, especially as you're trying to make that transition from a file server environment to SharePoint, and when you're like, hey, go here for everything you might need, that's one of those things that it's not a necessary thing, but it's kind of a cool thing that helps people navigate and feel comfortable with getting to the different environments. So anyway, now that we've got the sharing live and gave an illustration of audience targeting, let's kick it off and let's go.
Yeah, so before I show you the how, let me just show you again, as we said, start with the end in mind. So here's my Teams app that's open right now. I can easily access my OneDrive from there. I can easily access my Teams environment, so collaborating with my team, group, or department. And if you look back in some of our earlier videos, we talked through some best practices on how to set this up and how we collaborate and communicate with our team. And at the top here, you'll see I have a little My Tech button, which is really the shortcut to my intranet. And that just makes it so much easier. As you can see, I'm right in the Teams app immediately. I can access all the different areas of my intranet. And at the top, I have that very consistent global navigation that I mentioned earlier. If I needed to get into HR, for example, I can go there really quickly. I can go into marketing, security, or however your intranet is set up. And again, just having it all here on this left toolbar, it just makes such a huge difference with adoption in your organization. Yeah, people just tend to use it more versus having to go to SharePoint, open up the SharePoint app. I can do that really quickly. So they would, without that, they'd actually have to go into their SharePoint app. So over here to the waffle. So I'm going to click on the waffle and I'm going to go hit the SharePoint app. And as you can tell already, quite a few extra clicks. The default navigation is just not great. It's not a great experience. And if you're new to the organization and you haven't actually visited any of these sites before, this whole screen is blank. So it's super confusing for new employees that you're trying to onboard. If you're lucky, maybe there's something set up here and you could hopefully go to the home page from there. But yeah, overall, just not a great experience. So setting this up correctly is really crucial in promoting your intranet and promoting that adoption. All right. So what I'm
Nina,
going
as you're going to the next thing, I think building that into Teams is also an illustration. I think from what I've seen from Microsoft, Teams is the hub from which you can then go to all the different areas, right? Because you can link and hyperlink, and that's just an illustration of how I think how Microsoft is trying to make it the hub. It's not necessarily where everything lives, but it's everything. It's a place where you can go to get to everything where everything lives, and by linking it to that navigation panel on the side is a great illustration of that.
Yeah, I really do promote the whole one-stop shop concept, where you have one single dashboard and as far as possible, just trying to integrate everything people are working on in one place. All right, so I'm going to just head over to our HR demo site. In our previous 2 sessions, I walked you through creating a communication site from scratch, changing the design, the color scheme, the quick links, and we talked about web parts and a couple of the things, news, resources, and so on. So if you are interested, if you want to look back at the previous 2 videos, part 8 and part 7, it really goes through all of these steps and how to set this up. So what we did in those sessions is to create this HR demo site, but it's one communication site. I may have multiple communication sites. So maybe I have a home site, a kind of landing page. Maybe I have a separate communication site that's managed by the marketing department, for example. So there's quite a few different communication sites. And right now, they're basically standalone sites, if you will. We need to find a way to tie that up in a unified way where the navigation is consistent, because each of these, as you can tell here next to it, has its own navigation. So once I click on the HR demo site, I'm seeing the navigation for that particular site, and it's not very consistent. If I go to marketing, I'm going to see something different for marketing. So I do want to create that top level consistent navigation. So for the sake of this demonstration, I actually created a Contoso home site as well. So currently we have two different sites. We have the Contoso home, which is essentially a landing spot for our employees. So a lot of different high-level things here, like new employee onboarding resources, learning more about the organization, quick links to marketing resources, our HR site, etc. And then we have the HR demo site that we created in the previous session. So what I'd like to do here is I'd actually like to connect the two sites together. So the way to think about it is first of all, step one is designating a communication site as my hub. Typically, that's your home site, or the first site that you're going to land on, because that's also the site that we're going to link into Teams. So as of today, unfortunately, you can only have one home site linked into Teams. But typically, in my experience, most organizations have one single hub. And then from there, you can associate or link the other sites to that. So in our example, we'd have a home site, and then we'd associate the HR communication site, we'd associate the marketing, and in any other related sites, we're basically plugging them into that hub site. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I will say that in order to do this, you do have to have SharePoint admin credentials. So if there's some of you watching this that don't have that, I would just reach out to whoever manages the SharePoint side of things, and then give them the steps of the things that you need to have done. But it does require admin access. So to get to the admin center, I'm just going to show you really quickly. I would first of all go to the 365 admin center. As you probably know, there's quite a number of these. And the one that I'm specifically looking for is the SharePoint admin center down here. So I actually have this open. The SharePoint admin center shows me all of the sites that I have created. I'm specifically looking for this Contoso home. So this is this one over here on the left-hand side. So first step is I need to set that home site as my hub. So that's step one. So I'm going to click here on Contoso Home. And at the top here, I have the ability to register that as a hub site. So that's going to be the first thing that I do. So I'm going to call this hub name Contoso Home. And I'm going to click on Save. Okay. All right, if I go to the Contoso home page over here, you'll notice immediately when I refresh that page, a new line has appeared at the top there, which is where I'm going to be building out my global navigation. All right, so step two is now I need to go plug in these other sites in order to do that, I need to associate them with that hub site. So the other site that I wanted to plug in here is my HR demo site. I'm going to just scroll down here. I'm going to select the HR demo site. I'm going to click on the hub, and then I'm going to say associate with a hub. All right, so I'm going to associate with the hub Contoso Home, and I'm going to click on Save. All right, so a couple things when creating a hub, two important things. One of the first things is whatever the theme colors are that I picked for my home site, that will cascade through to any sites associated with it. It doesn't mean that you can't change the design. It's really more that kind of blue color scheme. So if I go to the HR demo site and I refresh that there, you'll see that the colors now align with my home page or my hub site, and I can also see the global navigation showing up at the top here. The second thing that I'm able to do is if I have different departments or groups creating news articles, so HR is doing their own news, and maybe marketing is putting out some of their own news, I can actually aggregate that news to the home page. So I haven't done it yet on this particular one, but I'm just going to show you in our MyTech demo site. I have a news web part on the home page, and over here you can see where the news is actually coming from a variety of different sites that are associated with that hub. So there's HR news, security news, and so on. So it's two really great features, additional features, if you will, that make hub sites a really great option. All right, so what I need to do next is I need to start building out that global navigation. So I'm going to go to my HR demo site. I'm going to grab that URL. And then I'm going to go back to my home page. And you'll see now I have two sets of navigation. So this bottom set here is the navigation for this specific communication site, but the top level is what I'm building out for my hub. And I'll circle back to that in a second, just on my personal preferences and best practices. So I'm going to click on add a link, and then I'm going to paste that address in there, and I'm going to say HR demo site, and OK, and save. All right, and it's really that simple. If I click here, I go to the HR demo site. Sometimes you just need to refresh the page as you're building out that navigation. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. And you'll see that the HR demo site appears up there. So I often do get the question, because now I have the global or the top level navigation, and then I have the site specific navigation. My personal preference, and this may be different for everybody, is that having two sets of navigation does actually become a little bit confusing. So once I have these hub sites set up, I generally will move all of my navigation up here to the top level, because this navigation up here in this kind of darker blue line up here is the navigation that's going to be consistent no matter where you go in your intranet. So, you know, people can always click back on a site and go back to wherever they need to go. It'll always stay the same. So, yep. Just my personal preference on how to do this. I usually clear this all out and then add them up here to the top level navigation. All right, so I'm not going to go through the process of adding in a whole lot of additional links. We did look at navigation in our previous video, but I just wanted to show you how you could do that for the global navigation. Again, if at any stage you needed to associate other sites to it, you could go back to the admin center, just go click on that particular site, say marketing, for example, click up here to hub, and then associate it with the Contoso hub. All right, so a really important aspect that I want to show here is if I go into edit, there's this little additional option over here that says enable site navigation audience targeting. So in our intro, we spoke about having the ability to show or hide links depending on which group they belong to. So if maybe we want a section in our site that's specifically for leadership, you know, for our executives, or maybe a subset of people within the organization, we can actually apply audience targeting that will hide that link for everybody else, but just show it for that particular group. So that needs to be enabled. So I do need to enable that slider over there and click on save. So let's say, for example, for our HR demo site, within this we have an employee survey. And I want to add that in as a link, but I want to hide it for certain people. So I'm going to just right click, copy that URL. Remember, in order to build out the global navigation, you have to be on the home page. So just one quick little tip there. So I'm going to click on edit. And I want to actually add this as a sub link under the HR demo site. So I'm going to add a new link in here. And it's going to be called employee survey. And this one, I want to target to a specific group. Unfortunately, you're not able to target it to specific individuals. These groups are based on however your 365 groups are set up in your environment. Typically, if you have groups set up for HR, marketing, and stuff like that inside of Teams, those groups exist already. So I'm going to say that I specifically want to target this to my human resources team members. You can add up to 10 audiences in there, so you can add quite a few different groups in there. And I'm going to click on OK. And then I'm going to make this a sublink of the HR demo site and click on Save.
One thing I like about that, Nina, as you're going through it, is that I think restricting it to groups is actually a good thing, right? Like trying to maintain all these audience targetings at an individual user level, I think it could get very chaotic, just like managing permissions into file and folder levels if you're doing that. So I actually really like it that you can limit it to groups, and it helps you kind of adhere to, I think, some good permissioning best practices relative to audience targeting.
Absolutely. And there's nothing worse than clicking on a link and getting a yucky error, error message or an access denied message. So yeah, in this example, I am actually part of the human resources team, so I do actually see the employee survey link. But if I was anybody outside of that group, this would be completely hidden. They wouldn't even know it was there. And so it's a really great way to also curate content for specific audiences inside of your environment. All right. So I wanted to circle back really quickly to the news, just because this is such a key part of using hub sites. Let me just refresh this page really quickly. So in my example here, this is the MyTech hub site that I created in a previous video. I'm just going to click on Edit here. And I'm going to click and look at the properties of the MyTech news. So if I click on the little pencil web part there, you'll notice that the news source has a couple of different options. So I can actually pull news from this site specifically, or I can do it from all sites in the hub. So obviously, in order for this to happen, you will have had to actually plug those different sites into your hub site. But I do love this feature because all of those specific groups and departments can manage their own news, but it all gets aggregated to my hub page or my home page for everybody to see, with a little tag saying from which site it's actually coming from. So you do have a couple of really good options here as well. So I'm just going to click republish. All right, so I'm going to go back just to today's demo. The last piece that I want to show here is how do I create that shortcut in Teams. So I'm going to go back to Teams here. Unfortunately, it's not just a simple matter of doing a copy and paste and the button pops up there. There are a couple of steps involved in getting this set up, and I'll walk through it right now. Again, similar to how we do hub sites, you would need Teams administrator permissions. So somebody on your team, maybe you already have that, or maybe you need to reach out to your IT department to get this set up. But there are a couple of steps kind of under the hood that need to happen in order to get this link set up. So again, I'm just going to go to my normal 365 admin center. And this time, instead of the SharePoint side of things, I am going to go to the Teams admin center. And there's a specific app that's required in order to set up that shortcut, and it's part of the Viva suite, and it's called Viva Connections. So Viva Connections does exactly what it says. It basically connects our SharePoint and our Teams side of things together. So in the Teams admin center, if I look on the left panel here, I need to head down here to Teams apps, click on Manage Apps. All right. Here, there's a whole lot of different apps that we can search from. We would specifically be looking for Viva. In my case, I've already used the Viva app and changed the name to MyTech, so it's not going to show up there as Viva Connection. So just know, once you've set this up and changed it to your organization's name, like MyTech or Contoso, you'll have to search for it for that updated name. But if you're doing this for the first time, you could just search for Viva Connections. In my case here, we've called it MyTech. I renamed it, so I'll just quickly go there. Right. Just click on done here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to customize this. So yours will still be saying Viva Connections. So up here, you can change the name of Viva Connections to your organization name, or a fun name that you've given your intranet, like Contoso Connect or MyTech Connect. So you can change that name up here. And then over here is the important bit. You would need to paste in your home page. So whatever that hub site, if I go here to Contoso Home, I grab that URL and then just paste it there in the website URL. And down here, you can actually make some changes to the icon itself. So so you're not seeing the little default Contoso icon. You can make that your own organizational icon. I would just double check here on what what the format should be. It'll tell you there what the size should be. It's pretty specific about that. Obviously, the icon's kind of tiny, so making sure that that's the right size in order for that to happen. All right. And once you've customized the Viva Connections app, you need to make sure that it's actually showing up in the Teams app. So that's a little bit down from here, so that we were in Manage Apps, and now we go to Set Up Policies. All right, I want this to deploy for everybody's teams in my organization. So I'm going to go to the Global option here, Global. All right, up here, it shows all of the installed apps. So I would say add apps and then go search for whatever you've named it. If you kept it Viva Connections, great. But if you've changed it to your organization name, I would have to go look for MyTech and add it in here, which I've done already. And then the easiest thing to make this readily available to everybody in your organization is to make sure that it's actually pinned in the Teams app on the left-hand side. So to do that, again, I would just click on Add Apps, add in whatever you've named it to. You can click and drag it, so where you want this to show up in Teams. And this will, once this is set up, it'll automatically deploy for everybody in your organization. So I've already included that, and then you hit save. I will say that whatever changes you make here may take up to about 24 hours to actually show up in your users' teams. So just be aware of that. They might not actually see that initially by default. One other quick tip I want to give here with the logo is to make sure that it's on a transparent background. I've noticed when I didn't do that, this little logo kind of had a really sort of shaded coloring, and it was really tough to see. So just make sure that it's a PNG and that there's no, that it's a transparent background. That makes a really big difference to how it shows up here. So really that is the setting up your Viva Connections. Yeah, one last thing I might just show here is in your 365 Admin Center, one last thing to check, and you could just do a quick search here for Viva. If I go to my Viva settings and we go to Viva Connections, create and manage a Viva Connections experience. So if I click in there, is just to make sure that you have set that same site that you created, like the Contoso Home, that you've set that as your home site here in your Viva Connections experience. So you may have to go and create new. I can just go create new. You already have an existing portal to set up as a home site because you've created that probably already. Click on that, go to next, and just paste in that URL. So in this case, it would be my Contoso Home. Copy. Paste the URL, and basically that's just setting that as your home page for your organization. And go to next and create experience and close. I now have two homepage experiences, so I would have to select the one that I wanted for this particular environment. So I'm going to just leave it on MyTech, but that would just be one additional step to make sure that your homepage is set correctly. Yeah.
So Nina, basically those two things are really, the first one was getting the link and the navigation in Teams. The second one was if you're going through the Office 365 Center portal, like going to office.com and clicking on SharePoint and then clicking on the home page in SharePoint. So that's what this last step is, what makes that the home page from a SharePoint home perspective, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that was a question. So Lisa, thanks for asking the question. We knew we were going to cover that, but I think those steps, it's not hard to do, but there's definitely several specific steps you need to take. And I can tell you, and I know Nina already went through this, but the when you rename it, realizing that you can't search for Viva Connections anymore because it renamed it. So like that, I know that, I remember that confusing me the first time I went through that in a demo environment and trying to play with that. So that's definitely some good little tips to make sure that you're connecting those dots and everything works the way you want. So at this point, that's really what we've got for today, and this wraps up our 9 series. Again, normally this is an 8 hours across 4 different sessions that we do in person. We're really trying to train the champions of your team, your power users of your team, to help make this a great experience. And the work that Nina was doing on the SharePoint sites and the navigation, if you've done structure and design, you've been intentional about what that should look like and how those permissions should be internally. This last step that we were going through today is not, it's a bunch of clicks to build the navigation, but the structure's already there. So the hard work is not today. The hard work is leading up to today. Like all the stuff that you had to do to put the design in place, put the SharePoint sites in place, the team sites in place, to enable that navigation and structure to work and to use those groups for audience targeting, etc. So we're excited. Next sessions, we're going to be doing things on Copilot readiness assessments and starter kits. So get ready for that. And join our LinkedIn community. We have built a LinkedIn community for our MS365 champions community. We want to be able to share great ideas, share this content, share questions that we all have, and collaborate together so we can all be more secure as well as be more productive. So Nina, any final thoughts before we sign off on this 9-session series of Train the Trainers?
No, I think one last final thought is to really, I think the purpose of the way SharePoint is set up is to think about really distributing that responsibility to various departments and teams. I find that in a lot of organizations, it's either the marketing department's responsibility or it's the IT department's responsibility. You know, the way that this is built is that, you know, this could be a shared thing, and having those specific groups be responsible ultimately for their content. I found that that's a way better way of keeping the content up to date, because it's, you know, they know their content better than anybody. I would say that, you know, that I would recommend at least some minimum amount of training for those site owners, and having, you know, make it a team effort, really. And that's where I've seen the most growth with clients that we've worked with. And you're just kind of changing that thinking of that being kind of a handful of people responsible for this. And this could be really much more of a team effort, and get people more excited and more likely to adopt it.
You know, Nina, I appreciate that, and that's very real. Like, if you have Teams owners, there should be specific training for people that are Teams owners. If you have SharePoint admins for sites or the whole thing, they should have some specific training around that. And the last thought that I have relative that you made me think of was just how when we have brought these organizations together in the same room and gone through this training together, the unintended consequence has been cross-departmental, cross-functional collaboration and ideation that sometimes didn't exist when they operated day to day in their world. And so there is value in bringing people together and bringing together a group of people that you've identified in your organization that are those power users that may have that extra permission sets, and the champions that are the evangelists that are really advocates for all this. Bringing that group together, you'll be more productive. You'll collaborate and communicate and collaborate better, and it'll really make this a much better and enjoyable experience for the rest of your organization. So, with that said, we've taken enough of your time. Thank you so much for watching live or the recorded version, and stay tuned for more on Copilot as well as the individual power user training on SharePoint and Teams as well.